I read somewhere the other day, and I hope this records because I don't have a mic, so there's a bit of wind noise, and I hope that this records. I read the other day something about adult loneliness, especially where, so it's a very long article. The article was exploring the concept of adult loneliness and how it occurs in two ways. It either drives people to seek companionship by getting married even though they are in unhappy marriages or staying in unhappy marriages, or it makes people who have decided to stay single, for instance. The inability of adults to make quick friendships the way that kids make friendships is something that I think the article was trying to explore, essentially to say that we sort of lose our ability to make quick friendships when we stop being kids, right? So at the age of say 10 to 12, children just grow out of being able to meet somebody just now for no reason and start playing and become lifelong friends. We lose that ability for many reasons, right? There's cynicism, there's adulthood, there's betrayal, there's lack of trust, etc., etc. So that's a different conversation. But I think what then the article is trying to say is that if we grow up like that, it probably explains why many people don't talk about the loneliness of adulthood, right? So a lot of people who are either married would use their spouse as companionship and their kids as distraction for a very long time. And so the loneliness only hits them when the kids have left the house and they've fallen out of love with their partners. Marriage is a long time commitment, right? So sometimes it's not always love and dovey dovey. When they, so essentially saying that you either are single forever, and people who are single forever are the ones that observe the loneliness very early. So by the time they turn 30, all their friends are getting married and paired up, right? So they moved on with their lives to their own partners. They now have kids, so they're distracted with everything. So the people who choose not to be distracted by anything are the ones who are the first to feel adult loneliness. They realize early on that the ability to make friends, and friendship is a two-way street. You might be willing and friendly, but nobody else wants to be friends with you. That's fine as well. You can't force it. But loneliness is going to come on you at some point. So if you're married, you're lucky because you're only extending the expiry date of your companionship. So you become a widow or a widow when your spouse dies, or when the kids leave the nest and you've divorced your spouse because you just suddenly realize that without the distraction of your children, you don't even know who you're married to anymore, or you're very unhappy and you want to leave. The point being that adult loneliness is actually a concept that nobody talks about, but it hits all of us at different stages of our lives. Early if you're single, later if you're married, later if you have kids. But it's something that at some point you have to think about, which is what ages people faster. So the article was saying that that's what a lot of older people, when they do surveys for them, older people that are not put in care homes and things like that, one of the big things for older people, especially when they hit 60 and 70, their friends have started dying, which is another level of isolation. What they always talk about is companionship. So half the time, what the caregivers do is just be around to have a conversation with these people, because otherwise, the loneliness kills them faster than the fact that there's nothing to do or they're retired. Do you know what I mean? And it's something that the article was going in depth about, the psychology of the human behavior and why we lose the ability to make friends early, and how this is an epidemic that nobody's talking about, but everybody seems to be going through. But we don't realize we're going through it. So you isolate yourself and you think you're the only one going through it. You turn 30, you turn 40, your friends have outgrown you, or you've outgrown your friends, you're not able to make new ones. And then you find that you're just lonely half the time. And or you have kids, they've left the house, etc., etc. You now grow old. Essentially, everyone's going to be lonely at some point. It didn't say everyone, it said most people, but it was just to say, as human beings, at some point, we have to take a second look at aging and isolation and decide whether or not it is something that we need to address as a whole, as a collective society, and say, is there a way that we can make sure that as people grow older and we've already identified that it's harder for them to make new friends, that they are not left alone, right? That we feel their lives is something else other than care homes. So most Western societies have care homes where they pack all their elderly grandparents and put in there, and then allow them to mix among themselves and do bingo, and you know what I mean, to solve that problem. Is that the way we all want to go? But what if you're not old enough to be in a care home? What if you're not sick? Do you know what I mean? What if you're just in that stage where adult loneliness has hit you earlier, right? But you're not old enough to be in a care home. What happens to those people? Do you know what I mean? What do we do about them? Anyway, like I said, it's very windy out here today, and I'm hoping that this records. But if it doesn't, that's fine as well. I read the article yesterday, and I thought, that's actually real. It's true. The article ended by saying that if any other sickness was as widespread as adult loneliness and isolation, we would be talking about it more. If it was HIV, if it was cancer, if it was anything else, we would all be discussing it as a priority and be putting funds and investment and trying to figure out how to make sure that if something affects this many people, that it's addressed, right? But because it feels like everyone just feels like it's a thing that they are responsible for and they should have solved. Essentially saying, if I was such a bad person, I'd have more friends as I age, right? Not knowing that actually that's not true, it's not your fault. People will leave you because life takes different directions for everyone. And it's something all of us are going through and all of us must discuss and find a solution to. As always, let me know what you think. I'm outside today. I want to go to the gym, but I don't know. I'm battling with it because of my blood sugar. The readings are not great, and I'm worried that if I go to the gym, I'll have hypoglycemia. That's not good. And physical activity makes, so I'm just doing the walk instead of going to the gym. Anyway, like I said, I hope this records, and I hope you have a great weekend for those of you who are having a weekend. All right, cheers.